I have access.
Thank you, everyone. Welcome to the April Denver Area Access User Group meeting. As you know, this is our annual show and share today, and we'll have some members of our group presenting some interesting things that they're doing with Microsoft Access. And we will start off with the Vice President of the user group, Jim Pilcher, who is going to present on some, I believe, some conversions or updates to Access that he did.
And I have changed my presentation, but it'll still be a good one.
Okay.
All right, so I'll go ahead and take it. And here we are. We are broadcasting from lovely Bokeelia, Florida. This is the view from my condo window. I wish. It's just a beautiful place to be. But tonight I am going to show you an application I wrote from scratch that it looks nice. It's got some nice features in it and that I don't think all Access developers use. So I'm going to show you how the application works. I'm also going to go behind the scenes a little bit and show you a few of the unique things that I'm doing. So this is an application to track projects for a hospital. It's Riverside Hospital. And although it is a real hospital, I have changed names and so on in here so that people are not recognizable. There are no patient data. This is all projects, marketing projects. And they wanted to track them and keep, because they've got marketing going on all the time for this hospital. So this, as you see here, is the main screen when you come in. One thing that you'll notice is the menus up here are rather sparse, and I got the menu to look this way by going into the options and disallowing full menus. I haven't done any custom menus here except for my quick access toolbar, but I don't give them full menus. So basically they've got the home screen, the home ribbon, and file, and even that is pared way down. They didn't want the average user. There were about 12 users of this going in and fiddling with all the access ribbon options, but they also didn't want to pay me to disable everything and give them a custom ribbon system. So this is what they get. So when they come in here, they may want to look at all projects, and this is their main entry screen. It's fairly standard access form. You can see here I've got stuff going way out to the end. I'm using the shrink and grow capabilities of access controls here because I didn't know what size their screens are going to be, and I don't like having something on a large screen just way up in the upper left corner. So although these are longer than they need to be, they look nicer than squeezing everything up into an area like this. And you got your standard tabs here. These are things related to a project. This is the team. Let's see if we can find a project, yeah, with some team members. There we go. So Stacy, Susie, and Amy are members of this project. This particular project has these milestones they need to complete and the date they reached them. There's no advertising that was done yet for this project, and no invoices against this project. But if we go down the row a bit, we should be able to find a project with well, apparently they weren't doing a lot of invoicing at the time I got this copy of the data, but there you go. So we have in here links. They are links right out to their system there. And I don't have, well there we are. This is a link to to their website, and that was their fee schedule from what, 4 years ago now. I'll close that and go back. And this is how they keep track of their projects. So they put them in and manage them from here. And then if they want to look at, so that's all projects. They also want to look at selected groups of projects. So, and they wanted this to be kind of a real-time kind of thing. So I gave them a little form here. And what happens here is I just say select, and right now that'll give us all 1,228 projects, if you saw down here, because I didn't pick anyone, but Steve Korn. I want to see any projects that he's been associated with, and there's 68 of them. You don't see them on the screen here, but if you take a look at the project team, he's a web design on this one, probably web design or he's designer on this one, what have you. Then you might say, well, I want to see any active project that Steve is on, and there are 13 of them. So now they can go through and review the projects, or if Steve comes in, he can review his own stuff and see what each project is doing, and maybe put in some notes. You'll notice here we've got bolding. They very much wanted to be able to put in multiple notes in the notes box. They didn't want to have independent notes like you would with a child table. So this is a rich text box that allows them to put the notes in, bold the dates, so it's easy to pick out the various notes. That's all done by them. I'm not doing anything. I just gave them rich text, and they are doing whatever it is they want to do. And then we have projects due. If you leave the date empty, it doesn't take it into account. But let's say projects due on or before today. Let's see if there are any. There are 2 of them. This one's due last March 31st, and the other one was due on April 15th, just a few days ago. Again, these are for Steve, and these are active projects. So what I'm doing here is this form is just floating above. It's a pop-up form, but it's not modal. So even though the form is on the screen, I can come in and do my editing, whatever I need to do. And if I can close the form independently, or if I close this form, the pop-up closes along with it. Also, you'll notice when it pops back up, the choices I had are still there. So they are kept from session to session, or from invocation of the project management form from one time to the next. And one other thing you'll notice is when I open it, it saves the location of where it was when you closed it. And the reason I gave them that is that some people have smaller screens, or maybe they want to put it right here and have it always show up there. Or some people would say, no, I always want it here. It'll open up for them again, right where they left it. And this is on a per user basis per computer, because this is all these values, and the location of the form is being stored in the Windows registry. And I'll go in and show you how I do that here. Just quickly, anyone there, do you do what I'm doing here? Have maybe forms that pop up and they keep their settings from session to session? Apparently not. So I'll close this, and I'm going to hit F11 real quick and show you how I do that. See, so here's the form we were just looking at, and you're all familiar with how these things look in design view, but let's take a look at the code behind it. I'm not going to run through the code in great detail here. I just want to show you that when I load the form, I go and use the get setting. This is a VBA function, and I get some settings that I've saved off in the Windows registry. And once I have those values, then I start setting up my form. I move it. Okay. Oh, someone just arrived. All right. So anyway, I move it. I set the due date, the status, the resource, those kinds of things, so they look the same as when they came in. And the way that these values get put out in the registry is when I close the form, I read those values, and I do save setting. So if I have a date, I do a save setting. If I don't have a date, I delete it in case there was a value out there called due date already, and so on. So it's on the form load and the form close that I retrieve, and I save my settings so they come back in the next time I run this. The other thing I wanted to show you here is when I do a select, I run through the values on the form, here, here, and here, and I take a look to see if I have any values, and I build myself a where clause, and then down here, I open the project form again with the where clause. And what this does is if the project form is not open, it will open it with the where clause to the appropriate projects, or if it's already open, it essentially just applies the where to the form. So once it's open and you start clicking select for your various filtering, it's just applying the filter to the open form. That's a feature that a lot of Access developers don't know, that you can do an open form on the current form, and all it does is refresh it with new information if you've given it a where clause or something. So this is their main invoicing form. I won't go a whole lot into it, but we've got a little bit of filtering here. We only want to see active projects, and that we want BK in the project name. They're looking for it and say, here, I want to create an invoice for that. So it comes out up here. I can put in an invoice number. And I add an invoice. And it goes ahead and puts it in there. If we were to find this back on the project management form with the invoice tab, we would find that invoice there on this project. Nothing real fancy going on here. All this stuff is filtering live. As I click this group here, it does a live filter. But here, it doesn't filter until I do a search, and then I can reset the whole thing if I want to and start from scratch if I'm invoicing a number of projects. List management. They want to call them lists. It's basically lookup tables. They have a group of lookup tables, and I want to show you this because it's a little different than you typically see this. These look like command buttons, and what you have is each lookup table that the button refers to comes up on the screen, and they're editable. But behind the screen here, what we actually have is a group, and these are not command buttons, these are toggle buttons. So each time I click one of these buttons in that group, the value of the group changes. And if you come back in here and take a look at what happens on the after update of the group, that's fired when I press one of those buttons, because the button updates the value of the group. So here's the after update. You also see here I've got my save settings and get settings. And so if you click, for example, you want to see milestones, what I'm doing here is I've got a set of subforms set up for each of the lookup tables. So each subform is customized to the lookup table. And then I take and I grab the caption off the button that I just clicked. So I just clicked milestone, so I know what subform to use. I know what the caption on that button is. And I come down here and I say, all right, I have a subform control in this form. So I set the source object to the subform that I just captured. And I set the caption on the list to the caption of the button that I just pressed. So if we go back, I'll open this again. So if I click milestones, you'll see the form change and I get the title right here. And all I'm doing is copying the title off of this button when I click it and putting it up there. Now that's interesting. But there you go. So they have the ability to manage their own lookup tables. By the way, this doesn't show when they're in the form. I opened that just a little bit ago. They don't have the menu here, the database window. So that's list management. And then every application I build for clients has a way to relink the tables built into it so they don't have to get out and do anything with the linked table manager. And in this case, all I do is I say, okay, I want them to show me where the data is. I click OK, and it went out and linked them. Now, one thing about this is if they come in here and the tables aren't linked properly, it will warn them the tables aren't linked and the main menu will open, but they've got to go to the relink tables and find where the tables are before any of this other stuff will work. So at least if the tables aren't linked, the application doesn't crash. It warns them that they aren't linked and they need to do something about it, and it tells them to press this button. All right, very quickly here. These are the kinds of things these are all reports that help them keep track and report on what's going on in the project. So here I have all current projects, and I'm gonna, you've got all sorts of things you can do here. The more you pick, the more selective you get. Right now, it's quite likely that I will get nothing in the report. Yeah, so let's just go back and we'll just choose from the areas here. These areas, I'm gonna run the report and I'm gonna sort by due date and then by project name. I can sort by other items too, but I'm just gonna do due date and project name. So when I click OK, it runs the report. In this case, because of the way I selected it over here, it's opened in report view, and there's a very good reason for that. I don't know if any of you use report view much, but here we are, all current projects as of today, and they're going to want to print this. And they are current, but I only want to print the ones that don't have a due date. So in report view, you can do some filtering on your own with a right click. So I'm going to say, show me all current projects that don't have a due date. I can come over here, do a print, and I'm just going to do a print preview. And you can see that although we ran the report and it had more in it, I did more filtering once the report was open in report view. If I don't want to do filtering, I just want to get a print preview, I can do that. And it can go right out to print preview, but now I can't do any filtering. And if I were to print right now, it would print an 8-page report. So I really like the report view for additional filtering, and they loved that. You'll notice here, this looks a little different than the other one I just brought up. There's no dates on it. The first one, when I brought that up, these are different forms, but I have subforms set up, and the subforms I bring together to give me various versions of these filtering. So I've got a subform that lets me do this right here. And in this particular one, I've brought in a subform that lets me do that. And when I click OK, it reads the values off these two subforms to give me my filtering. So I'm not really recreating this for every filter that comes up. I have the pieces defined individually, and I bring them together depending on the report I need. So you see here, there's no dates, and I've got an extra thing here, resource, geographic division. We didn't have a resource on one of the other ones. Then projects overdue, and you'll see this was entirely different. Let's do an OK, overdue over the past year. And this one opens up in print preview, I believe. Oh, this is report view, but it has a
Hi, Don, you're
pardon me?
Nothing, never mind, technical problem, we're okay.
All right. So this one has a summary at the bottom. So 9 of 849 projects are overdue from the time frame. I can, for example, come in here and filter, say, let's say it's, I want everything that's less than 18 days overdue. I can reduce it, and again, I can go out and print this now with the refinement that I've put in here. But that is about it. They can manage their projects, relink, manage their lookup tables, get all sorts of information about their projects in the form of reports. I got a button here that lets them clear everything if they just want to start over. Maybe I want to see 3 projects that are due in the next 300 days. And that's what comes up. So very flexible way to manage and report on their projects. Very simple application, a lot of interesting stuff going on behind the scenes. I showed you a little bit of the code, and with that, I exit Riverside. And we're back in beautiful Bokeelia, Florida. Thanks, folks.
Thank you, Jim. And you have the custom, you might want to pull it back up. You have the custom look and feel on all the buttons throughout the application?
Yes.
Is that done via some sort of global theme setting, or did you have to set that up individually on every button, or did you copy and paste, or?
Those were set up using the Access interface. These are, when you're putting in buttons, you can, let's see, I don't have the full menus here. Let me open it with full menus and I can show you that. All right, so if I open the main menu and we go in design view and we go to format, you've got quick styles.
There we go.
That's the style I'm using. And
that does that apply throughout the entire application, or do you have to set that on every single individual button?
I had to set it on each button, but I can come in like this and do them all at once in a group.
Okay.
But you can also make it a default by going to Design, the Design tab, and pull down the there, and then set control defaults with whatever is
Oh.
being, and now pop another button on there and it'll be that same configuration. Or so it said.
Interesting.
But
Thank you.
you'll notice this button doesn't quite have it's not exact. So
Same,
I'm
no.
not sure what it did. But if you come in here, let's see, on format, there we are, and quick styles, it doesn't seem to have the format that we just gave it, but if I click that, I can get it. So I'm not sure what happened there, but that's how you do it, is with quick styles. You can also change the shape.
Right. Okay. But you have to do it on a button by button or a manually selected group mode. You can't set like a global default other than maybe getting the default style.
Well, like Dawn pointed out, you're supposed to be able to, and we probably just did something wrong, but I did it button by button.
Okay, thank you. It was a very nice looking application.
Yeah, it is real clean. It shows well, and it works well for them too.
Okay, so Jim, we lost our audio for a few minutes while you were explaining how you were caching the search criteria on the project form.
Okay.
Can you, and I think what I was unclear about was where you're caching, not that one, the other one, where you're caching these search criteria in between.
All right.
Uses of the,
I'll go back and show you very quickly. It's being held, the short, blunt answer is it's in the Windows registry, but I will show you what I'm doing there. So that's a select. And I'll go back into the code. And I'll go to the form close. So what happens is when I close the form, there's a VBA function called saved setting. And this is built into VBA. It's not a custom function that I wrote. And it requires 4 parameters. You have to give it the name of a project, the name of, let's see, what does it call that? The section, and the section that it's being stored in the registry, I give it the name of the form. So each form has its own section because I do several forms like this. And then the key is I'm going to store it with this project for this form. I'm going to call this window top, and I'm going to give it the value of this current form and the window top. And I run through and I save all the necessary values, the form location and the various text boxes or combo boxes, whatever I'm working with here. Here's a combo box. I save those values out there, and then the form closes. Those values then, when I open the form again, as it's loading, and this is before the form displays, I come up here and I say, all right, let's get the top left, the due date, the status, the resource, which is the person, and compare, I forget what that is. But anyway, let's go get those values. And oh, by the way, and that's get setting. Down here it was save setting. So they're a complementary pair of functions. The thing is here, I give it the project. Here's the section. So I'm giving it the same name as I did down here for section. But I only specify here window top. And if there is no setting called that, I call my own zero null function, and it returns a 0 to me. Down here, if get setting has a 4th option, and the 4th option is if I cannot find this setting, given these parameters, it will return a -1 to me. So I can tell in my code if I want to whether or not I found a setting, and I can make decisions based upon that. In this case, -1 if you go back to the form itself, it actually shows in the combo box, it says all. That's just the -1 means all in that combo box. So does that answer your question, Don?
Yes, it does. Thank you for the explanation.
Sure.
So does that go into, in the registry editor, local user, and then your application name, or where does that go in the registry?
It goes down in, Kevin, feel free to jump in if you know exactly, but if you look in the registry, it's H key current user, and you get down into Microsoft Office, and then Access and VBA. It's way down in there, and it's an area that the Access developers put aside for developer use like us with those two functions.
Excellent, thank you.
And one thing that's not obvious, and I'll tell you, is that by using those functions, every person that runs this gets their own custom values saved because it's saved in their current user hive. So if you have 3 people logging in on this computer under their own logins, they all get their own custom locations and things that are saved that come back to them. It's not a global thing that is for all people. So that's pretty cool. If one user wants their form, their pop-up, over here, one wants it here, they all get their stuff.
And since it's in the registry, that's stored even after a system shutdown and reboot and log in, you still have your data there.
Yep, it's from session to session. You can shut that computer down. You can re-image it, put it up on new hardware, and it'll still be there if you put the image back.
Nice.
Well, it should persist too if you replace their front end as well.
Right.
Yes, that's right.
So my method's always been to put user settings in a local table, but if you replace their front end, it's gone and you have to rebuild it.
Right.
So,
And I have used the save setting, get setting for more than this kind of stuff. I've used it, as you suggested, Dawn, to save all sorts of user settings in there and bring them back the next time the user logs in.
yeah.
In a environment with a Windows domain, is there any spatial, what would you call it? Is there any spatial setup to allow this?
The saving in the registry?
Right.
No, there's no special setting. Like I said, the developers of the product set aside that area and gave you those 2 functions to be able to deal with putting stuff in the registry. So there are no permissions issues, nothing like that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
One question for you, piggyback on that. If we set up a virtual environment based upon what George presented a few months ago, would you be able to have different registry settings?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it would work in a VM just the same, right, Jim?
It works exactly the same in a VM because when we set up a VM, we give each user their own login. So they've got their own their own hive in the registry for their login, so that it gets saved for them.
Very nice. How much, in terms of the menuing, you talked about providing essentially a dashboard, and instead of writing custom menus or a custom toolbar, you just eliminated a lot of the defaults. You seem to indicate that was a lot less work than writing a custom ribbon. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's very simple. You just go into the access options, the current database. I turn off display navigation pane, and I turn off allow full menus. That's all there is to it. And that it doesn't keep them from doing bad things, but it gets real close to keeping them from doing bad things.
Okay. Because in their version of the application, they don't have access to this access options window, right?
You're right. They don't have access to it. So it becomes difficult for them, for example, to enable this.
Okay.
Now, if I believe I've got it set up, if they're smart enough to enter this with the shift key down, all bets are off, but they aren't that smart. And again,
And there is a way to lock that.
This keeps honest people honest. That's all it does.
Nice. All right, do we have any other questions?
I do have one more. Under the relink tables, you said that, you know, buttons are disabled based upon the fact that they may not be linked. So if you open the database and they're not linked, how do you navigate basically out of the fact that there's broken links?
What I do is when I open the main menu, I didn't check out my code on this today, but when I open the main menu, none of these buttons are connected to any data. So when this main menu opens, I run out and check the link on the primary table, which is the project table. And if it's broken, I pop something up and say, hey, you got to relink your tables. They click OK, and they get this menu. And but the first thing they have to do is click this or nothing's going to work. If they click all projects, for example, this comes up blank. There's just nothing there. So they relink tables. I ask them, you know, where are the tables? And we find the back end, and there we go. The reason that we did it this way is in this particular group, the tables resided out on the server, and people had different drive mappings to the same folder on the server. So I couldn't just give them a pre-linked front end that connected to the S drive, for example. And I don't recall a reason, but I couldn't give them pre-linked using the universal, the UNC path. There was something about that it didn't work for all users. And I think it had something to do with some of them trying to use a VPN. But anyway, so that was my way around it, is I check it, and if it looks like the project table is not linked, they have the opportunity to go find it. And they were schooled on where they can find their data.
Nice.
But
okay, it's really
like
cool.
I said, that only works if you don't try to reference any data before you give them the option of relink.
Okay, great. Any other questions? Okay, fabulous. So thank you so much, Jim.
You're welcome.
So now I think how it works. You need to log in to go to meeting, or do you not want to?
How should we? All
3.
Hi, everyone. I'm Phil Ferrero. I'm going to do a presentation of some technique just to display data. It's part of the database that I've built, database asset for a local organization here. It's been trying to think of a presentation tonight. I've been doing less of the cool, fun, let's figure out something new stuff, and more of the get down and roll up your sleeves, get a few things done. So this is something I did a little while back. And actually, I might have touched base with Jim on some of the work on it. So nonetheless, this particular application is called Tactic. I think that's a pretty cool name.
I like it.
Unfortunately, I can't, it was built with federal dollars, so I can't sell it. But nonetheless, there's an organization here locally that uses it, and we'll see about what next steps are for Tactic. As you can see, it's got an icon. You can fire it up from the desktop. Of course, warning message, which I'll have to make sure it gets taken care of in the next version. But you can log in as a few different users. We'll go in as using the ACCDB. That opens up the ACCDB version. Oops. For some reason, it's not getting killed off, so let's just kill it off. No, let's just kill both of them off. There we go. So again, we'll open up the DB version. So you can see I have a login screen. Dashboard. And this one's somewhat rudimentary. The client really didn't want a lot to go on. I mean, there are options. I kind of pared down a lot of stuff to make sure that they didn't have to really concern themselves except for one user menu, which if we picked a different user, I think we get a different menu. And I may not have the password.
Try invalid.
ABC123. Well, we'll bypass that. I'll just use the admin, which is what I use to mainly develop it. So the client has an ability to track certain things in this database. We can come in and pick up some things. They have entities that they want to track time for meetings. They have partners where they want to know if a particular partner got assigned to a meeting. Simple database, data entry stuff. But in this particular case, they wanted something that was a little bit outside of the norm for them on this particular reporting side. They wanted a report menu, and they also wanted a particular report that I'll show you how I created for them. This particular reporting menu is something I use often for clients. Gives them the ability to select different years of data, put in fiscal, calendar. You can pick particular entities here on the right, or you can pick a statewide view. Let me get back to the report that they wanted. So they wanted, this is a database that tracks hours and time. So they wanted a list of all their health centers that they track, and they wanted to see each health center in its own column, and with a summary of data at the end in a training, a summary of their training hours and the participants. So just basically taking Excel, trying to fit it into an Access box. So immediately once I saw that, I thought, okay, pivot table, right? You can take and make a pivot table. So one of the challenges of the pivot table was the fact that there was going to be a need to create totals, have it somewhat dynamic, because for particular specific dates, there may be a need to include or exclude a particular or health centers that don't fit within that data parameter. So for whatever time frame, you may or may not have this particular one access. So if I picked the 28th, of course I don't want access to show up, or access. But if I could pick a different date range, of course I want to see them show up as well.
Mm-hmm.
And as well, I want to get totals. So at the bottom, I want to have the totals show up. I want to have it in date order. So I want to have it, if I pick April 1st, I want to see it start April 1st through April 28th. With something unique to the date of request as well, that I believe these are actually strings. So I had to, actually didn't think about that part as I was doing this presentation, but I know that that played a part into it. So I guess at this point, I got a picture based upon the Excel file of how I wanted to look. So then it's a matter of going back and creating it. One of the challenges beyond getting this to sort, getting the totals, as well as then they like to have it sent to Excel. So if I usually create a send to Excel button here. I've got to be able to take the query as it is, have it in the proper sorting order, and then send it off to an Excel file that they can utilize. So that's the finished product. And I'll try to take you through the weeds with me here to see what I needed to do in order to get that. We're going to do the steps here. So basically, what I want to do, I want to go to my developer menu, and I'll just put in a list of queries that this involves. So the main one is getting the detail of the query. Basically all the requests in more of a flat data look. The date of the request, the name of the training. I keep an ID field in here because I'll utilize this later to connect everything. I have an entity name, but I also create a short name, and that will be important later because I want to include this short name as one of the columns, so it's a little more readable. And then I'll tally up hours, participants, and then I'll include any field I might want to filter on. So in this case, I want values 1, which are the health centers I want to pull in. So that's getting the detailed records. The second step is to get a list separately of participants. And again, I want it to look like this Excel file. So I want to utilize pivot table or a pivot query to put everything, all the particular health centers in a column view. So my second query is called training list participants. And in order to get that, I'm going to create, do a pivot with the participants as the data piece and pivot by this entity name. And in this case, I use short name, just as I mentioned before. Once I get the items in a column view, I want to be able to not have those columns unreadable at some point. So here's the columns. As you can see, I think this is a total view or something where it doesn't fit any of these parameters. So there are my columns. So now I want to get next are, I also see from requests I got that they want to, as well as participants, they want hours, but they only want them summed up. And then they want a summation of all the people who were trained in that particular date and training. So in order to get the hours, I'm going to create a separate query. In this case, I created two, and I think it was in order to get some formatting corrected. Let's just look at the last view of that. Yeah, it was basically formatting. So here's the queries that are going to total up the number of people trained, the sum of the hours, and the sum of the participant hours.
So that TAID is what you use to link the different queries together?
Correct. Yeah, I include, again, the TAID, which is just basically an identifier for each particular event, a particular date that went.
Okay.
And in that, using a fourth query or a fourth step, I combine the hours and participant queries in two areas. One, is going to give me the list of the requests and everybody who was trained, and as well all the participants. And I do that, again, by, as George mentioned, making a link between the TAIDs, because I know those are going to be unique. They're the participants, the total, and each particular event. As well, summary is going to be then the totals part of things. So instead of, this is where the date came in. Instead of the date of the request, I just put in the word totals, which means when I combine these two queries, that field is going to act like a string, and hence you can't sort on it through the date. I went back in my notes and I had wondered why I didn't use a summary, which I think queries have the ability to do. You can create a summary. And there was something unique about the fact that you'll find out I have to recreate these each time I run it. And something about the way that Access then resets the SQL of a particular query, it doesn't play well with having a summary on there. Sometimes the summary would just not show up. So it was kind of funneled towards having to make two queries, one of them a list and one of them a totals, and then combining the two in a union query, which is this roll-up query. Now, something that makes us somewhat unique as well is the fact that in trying to make this a little more dynamic, because you can see if I pick, oops, so, if I pick different dates on here, it's going to present me with different different values in the columns, right? So this necessitated a little different process than just basically creating those queries that you see here and then rerunning the running the steps in order to produce this. What I had to do, let me go in here. Let me get to the form. What I had to do when I was updating the record source is basically recreate these queries each time I make my selection. So each of those queries for totals, the training list, the summary, which includes the totals, and then the roll-up, which is the unit query for each of them, has to have something dynamic. And the dynamic part is basically the columns. Each time I make a selection, I have to pick the columns based upon what entities are included in the data. So let's say for this particular time frame, I'm not going to have a particular value for access. I've got to recreate all three of these queries in order for it to eliminate the access entity. And the way I do that is each time I come in, I have some set standard values that I create for each of these queries. Some of the initial parts of the queries, the date of the request, the name, stuff that I know is going to be common. And then I come down to a dynamic part, which is the entity short name. From there, I take each value that's in the training list detail, which is the detail of the time frame that I'm looking at. So in this case, it's going to be 425 through 430. And I'm going to pick out the short name of each, and then loop through the short name in a record set and basically create a dynamic piece to each one of these queries, the summary, the list, and the roll-up. So for each time it comes in there, it's going to have the selections I want that time frame, each of the entities. There's the summary. So I'm setting whatever SQL I've created. There's the, and I use query string, so the actual name of the query, which I do in a lookup. So it's basically going to be query training and then underscore summary for the first one. I recreate just plain query training list, I think it's what's called, and then the roll up that goes on, or that gets created. That is pretty much how this report gets created. Any questions on how you create and take a pivot that has dynamic values and summaries?
So they basically, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, so they basically gave you that spreadsheet and they said,
Make it look like this.
we want this in Access. And they had they built that spreadsheet manually doing pivot stuff in Excel?
No,
No.
probably more taking and totaling.
Okay.
So the spreadsheet that they gave you had all the columns every time, and they wanted it.
Well, you know, for whatever they create during that time frame, they included it in the example. So I think from what I can see from this example, every health center that they oversee is in this example, but yet they wanted something that was dynamic to
Right.
show a particular health center if it didn't have
So like the current column that's highlighted in dark green,
yeah.
is they wanted that collapsed out when it was all empty.
Yeah, so if they selected a time frame, let's say here, they wouldn't want to see this,
Right.
this query or this column.
Very cool.
The on your form, is that just a sub form at the top that you built your custom menu on, or?
Yeah, so this basically is kind of a parameterized subform that I can then utilize for different purposes, different apps. So, this particular app I've already demonstrated before. It uses the side menu, right, as a way to just give the user more of a navigation than the navigation pane. It kind of funnels them to what you want. It does have its own admin menu where you can come in and customize things. Whereas,
It's really nice looking out.
yeah, this is probably like the pared down version of the app that I have. You know, I'm comfortable with it, and I think it hides enough from the client so that people don't get into trouble.
Right.
And then I keep a developer tool button up here that's only visible to me, so I can come in and revise things.
So if you log in as a regular user, for example, you don't see the developer toolbar, right?
Correct, yeah. So I'll show you from, watch me not get out of this. I'll show you from a different menu. I picked, let's say, power user, right? They would get
Gotcha.
a different menu than if I picked a report user.
Okay.
So whereas the power user might get data collection because they want to come in and import data.
Okay. Makes sense. And do you find it just you like better working with your own subform buttons rather than trying to deal with the access ribbon?
I do, just because. Oops.
It says it's invalid. Yeah, there you go.
Just remembering my password. So yeah, so you can see here they don't have a report or a data menu. I've also taken away the setup menu from, right? So they can't do any changes to the setup. So here, you know, they don't have a way to get out because I've disabled the X at the top. The way they have to get out allows you then to control what gets dropped, how it gets dropped.
Gotcha.
And then I have my own menu. So as you saw there, there was no toolbar, or at least
Right, no menu bar, no,
Yeah.
no ribbon. So you just put a form up there with your own buttons on it that you display conditionally depending on
Right.
the login
Yeah.
user.
So this, let's see. We'll just log in as this. If I wanted to come in here. Okay. Sometimes what's kind of strange is with this particular menu, and I haven't tracked it down, that you'll see I'm right mouse clicking. It takes away the actual.
Oh, you don't get the context menu.
Well, you do. You just have to get out and get back. For some reason, and I haven't tracked it down in the code yet, it will remove that context menu on occasion.
Mm-hmm. Is that custom context menu code that you have, or is that just built in?
It's built in. So I have this on my auto.
It'll just go away globally? Huh.
Yeah.
What version of Access is this?
This is 2013.
2013.
Yeah. Right now I have clients who are in 2013, and so I have to kind of build to along. But yeah, you can see here along the header here, the buttons. These are, you can enable or disable.
Gotcha.
Buttons.
Nice.
There. That one. And I've put in little things like change the user-defined icon in here. Fun stuff.
Did you and I'm just totally shooting from the hip here, but did you consider dumping your data set out to Excel, doing VBA to run pivot stuff in Excel and then bringing the table back into Access, or is that just not even interesting?
Playing Excel and
yeah, instead of mimicking what Excel does in VBA, just saying, okay, Excel, do your stuff and give me the data when you're done, or is that not?
Yeah, it
might be more work.
I've probably never considered it.
Right. It might be more work.
Probably 50-50.
Yeah.
You could certainly do that because I have ways that this menu here, this database window, I bring in other stuff. Like you can put in a link to a web file. So I have my instructions. So
Your PDF, yeah.
So it's a PDF, but it's on the web.
Gotcha.
So I can update it and then update the instructions. I can link to a website. So if they want remote support, they can link in here and it goes.
That's just a web browser control.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a web browser control. So yeah, I could basically link to a file. So you can link to an Excel file if you wanted to. I just found, it was easier to try to manipulate things while I had access.
Yeah.
Again, there's so many ways to do things.
Yeah. Excellent. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you.
Mr. Jim, are you there?
Yes, sir.
I was wondering, we probably don't have time for another full demo, but maybe we can do a mini lab and get people's input on this. Lee, do you want to give the background on that?
Okay. So at work, I have MDB database, like the ones I showed in my last presentation. And when we open them, we get this message that pops up. It might be something responding to the corporate network security, and the user clicks open and everything's okay. Everything works normally. I just want to know, is there a way to suppress this messaging, or does it persist based on, I don't know if it's a Windows thing, we're on Windows 10. So anyway, if anyone's seen that before.
Now, this isn't, you don't get the yellow bar at the top.
No.
So it's not the trusted,
Enable for edit.
yeah, it's not the trusted location issue.
No.
Right.
Nope, it's just when you double click on access, the frame comes up and
they
right in the middle
dismiss
before it
this, and it comes up every time they,
go into the access application, yeah. When they try to open my database, yeah, then they click open, everything's normal. There's nothing, it's just, so I don't know if it's something new on network, because it says determine that the content came from a trustworthy source.
But it's in your local file system.
Yeah, right. So should leave this content disabled. So, I mean, how do you leave the content disabled unless the content provides critical functionality? Yeah, well, it does, but so just wondering, maybe I'll have to click more information. And
Yeah, I haven't seen that.
yeah,
I've seen it. Let me, I'm trying to go back to where I've seen that.
this is the same one that's been around since 1999. So it's, I mean, it's open, so it runs. It's just this started cropping up. And people are migrating to Windows.
Jim, are you seeing what?
No. You want to make me presenter, Jim?
All right. While I'm doing that, I want to, while he's still here, I want to thank Kevin for sitting in tonight. He is an ex-member of our user group. He left Denver in 2008. And prior to that, for several years, he was lab director and vice president of the group. I extended an invitation to a group of international access gurus to which I belong, and for them to attend tonight. And Kevin came in and watched, and I want to thank him for doing that. He is our first external guest as we try this new way of doing things, and I appreciate him coming in. So with that being said, go ahead. Oh, hi, Kevin. I see you.
Hi. I'm not muted anymore. That's quite the introduction. It's just kind of sad. I had nothing better to do tonight than sit here.
Oh, such high praise for our group.
I know. I mean, it was like, I guess I need to get something going on in my life.
Kevin, tell us about this error message. We know you have inside knowledge.
Yeah, I'm 5 years removed from Microsoft. Yeah, this looks like something I've seen before. Let me just do a quick.
What do you think?
I was going to mention that we had something similar in Outlook, well, applications. A Microsoft Outlook security notice identified a potential security concern, similar language. This location may be unsafe, and it's a hyperlink. And I think in tracking it down, at least, it was a non-existent path for the file on a person's PC. So somebody sent a link that existed on their PC, but didn't exist on the other person's PC, which leads me to think that it might not have the right path, if their network is not allowing that to open, like somehow the path is not correct.
Yeah, they have their own copy on their desktop, so it's not like they're all opening the same one from network.
So this is a local file that
Right,
But
yeah, everyone gets their own copy.
and the
of that.
application successfully opens, and they
Oh,
can
yeah.
use it just fine. They just get this
Same
annoying,
thing, they've been open for 20 years.
annoying
Yep.
message.
So it's just, it might be.
And
What happens when they show more information.
I don't know if I clicked that, but I'll look into that.
Yeah.
Does this have anything to do with trusted locations?
I don't know.
Because in
It looks like it's,
Access, you can set up trusted locations.
Yeah, that was my inclination as well. And that will, usually though, there's a yellow bar that sits on top of, below the ribbon in Access when you do that, but you know, users aren't very observant.
so here's the message I get when I open an MDE file on my own local PC. And it's the same potential security concern has been identified. I can open it.
And you'll notice
It'll open.
if you scroll back down to that photo, it says right underneath it, open a database from any untrusted location.
Yeah.
So the first thing I would attempt is to make sure that you've dealt with that,
Add it to the registry, right, under trusted locations?
right? You can do that in Access and set up your trusted
Yeah, in
locations
Access.
in the security area.
I think this article will show you how.
Yeah, file,
Right now, I don't have a trusted location. Let's see what happens if I
file trust center settings.
trusted.
Let me send this to you, Lee.
Yeah, okay.
I'm going to make this tactic location.
So Phil is experimenting right now.
All right.
It's all coming together. So I made the tactic. I got the same error, Jim. I
Yeah.
made tactic. I made the folder location trusted.
Did you click
Let's
check
open
box?
up the MD.
Did you click the checkbox that says trust all subfolders also?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
Let me go back because it's giving me that same message.
Are you sharing yours? Who's sharing their screen?
Me.
Try it again.
So Phil's testing it.
I can put Phil up if we want. Let me know if you want to see his screen on here.
Do we want you to be up there too, Phil?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll show you.
See what happens in the real world, right?
Okay, make Phil there we go.
Okay. So we'll go through the path here.
You need to,
Share your
Share.
screen.
Share. Share with us.
There we go.
There. Okay. So let me see if I'll show you what I reproduced on. This is basically the same issue, right?
Okay.
So if I can open it, and the only reason it doesn't do it with the MDE file, it does it with an
ACCDB
It uses
shows the,
the ACCDB works fine, the ACCDE does not. So if I I'll use the data tables to access it quickly.
Are you running the same version of Access in which the ACCDE was created?
Yes.
Okay.
the last one, field test.
So we'll add tactic. Root subfolders.
Okay.
So the trusted location. I don't think there's anything else. Subfolders are allowed. Okay.
And restart
Make sure.
Access.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So now we'll open the MD, the ACCDE again. Looks like it worked.
Okay.
there you go.
Surprise.
I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, I'll try.
Thanks for the, no,
And there is, if you don't have code to set the registry, I do have something.
Okay, yeah, I'll try that setting first and see.
yeah, you have to, each user has to trust the locations on their computer.
Yeah, most keep it right at the desktop.
Right.
See, Kevin, you did add value.
I did. Woohoo!
Thank you. All right, well, thank you, everyone. Next month, we have Aaron Kogan, another former DAAUG member, now residing in more tropical climes. And he will be presenting on automating Word through Access. So please join us next Thursday, May 16th. So thank you very much, everybody. And we'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Goodbye.
Thanks, Kevin.
Bye,
Kevin.
everyone.
Yeah, I've always